Hello there and welcome to the Paper 2 support for question 3, which effectively is the combo source question, looking at two sources. Here's the question. This is again for the 2015 source paper for OCR, and it asks you to look at sources C and D. Why do these two sources give very different accounts of living conditions in the 1880s? Date there, that's important. They've also made the statement very different, which suggests that you have to say whether it is different or not different. To do this, really, you're using, again, own knowledge. That's why it's right at the top of the list there. Then I would suggest combining the sources and look at how they're similar, and then how the sources are different. So similar, different, and then again, why? Because that links to this bit here, explain your answer. This fascinating little picture you've got here is by Charles Booth. This little bit talks about the social conditions and it's colour coded, whereas this map here is what it's referring to. It's just fascinating because the map itself shows semi-criminal in black living here, right next door to the well-to-do who are living here. A fascinating map, but that's Charles Booth, and again a bit of extra knowledge that you can throw into answers. Let's have a look at this one then. So these are the sources. Let's get straight to it. Source first one, source C is 1881, source D 1889. Let's look at the nature of the source. It's a newspaper. This one's Charles Booth. Charles Booth is the guy that I was talking about a minute ago, and he was conducting a report into the conditions of housing and public health back in London. So if you look at the content, the key feature of source C, obviously read this source in your own time, but the key content here is that it's referencing a conference declared open. Medical men from all parts of Europe are taking place. It's an exhibition, and it's talking about essential for good health, and it's talking hygiene. Okay. Then it mentions, he said that the government is fully aware of the importance of these requirements. Fascinating, because that suggests that the government are trying to do something. Disease always had a tendency to spread in such places. So it's talking about alleys, unhealthy courts, which is linked to Charles Booth here. So Charles Booth has created a survey, which it says there for you. It's talking about slum conditions being appalling, dustbins, toilets and so on. 7 families living there, little yards, back-to-back housing kind of conditions. Broken table at which to work and eat in this way. These people lived year after year. What's similar about these two? Well, they're both talking about hygiene and disease and talking about the nature of the poor. Source C, however, is different because it's more positive and it's a conference and people are talking about trying to make improvements to this thing. It is a newspaper. It is clearly trying to show the positive side of what the government is trying to do. Could be cynical there, really. And then it's trying to make people think something's happening about these things. But then, arguably, 8 years later, Charles Booth's survey reports that the things that they were talking about 8 years ago still haven't happened. So, an example on how to apply it. Here we go. I've gone straight in with these two sources. The two sources give similar accounts because they both talk about hygiene after germ theory and the Second Public Health Act. Again, like we've done before, this is okay, own knowledge. I've gone, which means that, so I've suggested that my point is going to move towards an explanation. And I've been quite brutal. I've said here is where the similarities end now. One thing I haven't mentioned in this particular bit is the way that they were both talking about conditions in the courts and the alleys. I then go on. They are very different because source C refers to an exhibition which is being reported on in the newspaper. The purpose of this source, look at that key word there, purpose, the good buzzword, is to inform people, blah, blah. It was also written earlier than the second source. I've done a combination here, so I've referenced the second source here, and then I've done the magic which shows that, or which shows what was being discussed in that time period. I mentioned the 9 years difference. I've done a quote here. These slums are appalling. And then I've again used OK, own knowledge. Charles Booth is using the report in an attempt to make suggestions for change. You could potentially expand a little bit more on Charles Booth if you wanted to. I talk about other differences in there. And again, this answer isn't complete. There's a ... just here, which suggests that you could write a bit more. At the end, I've come up with the reason for why they're so different is because of the purpose of each source, one being to celebrate an exhibition and say what the government's doing, and medical experts at the time. The other one is a report, which shows that there is a different focus. I do hope that that's okay, and I wish you good luck with the rest of the exams.